Marjorie Whitfield was a 62-year-old retired teacher who lived in Georgia. She owned 40 acres of land that her parents had passed down to her. This wasn't just any land. It was special because her family had worked really hard to buy it and keep it. When Marjorie was little, she used to run around barefoot on this land, chasing fireflies and listening to her dad talk about how important it was to never sell it. Most people didn't think Marjorie's land was worth much. It had trees, uneven ground, and thick clay soil that was hard to build on. But to Marjorie, it was priceless. Unlike other people who inherited land and forgot about it, Marjorie took great care of hers. She paid her taxes every single year on time, kept all her paperwork organized in a fireproof safe, and even had her lawyer friend Samuel Drake check the legal papers every few years to make sure everything was correct. One summer day, Marjorie was driving near her property when she saw a bulldozer tearing up the ground. At first, she thought it might be the county doing road work, but when she came back a week later, she saw survey stakes lined up in neat rows and workers pouring concrete. She stopped her car and asked a worker what was happening. The man told her they were building a new neighborhood called Lakewood Meadows with about 90 houses. Marjorie's heart sank. They were building on her land without asking her permission. As weeks went by, she watched houses go up, wooden frames, roofs, and siding. Strangers were claiming the land her family had protected for decades. When she told her friends at church, some didn't believe her. They said nobody could just build houses without permission. But Marjorie had all her papers to prove the land was hers: deeds, tax receipts, and maps going back to the 1950s. What Marjorie didn't know was that the Lakewood Meadows Homeowners Association had made a big mistake. They worked with a construction company and thought her land was empty and unused. Years ago, there had been an error in the county records that made the land look like nobody owned it. The HOA bought nearby lots and expanded onto Marjorie's property without checking who really owned it. They thought it was free land they could use. The houses sold quickly. Families were excited to move into brand new homes with fresh paint and nice yards. Kids rode bikes on the new streets, and parents planted flowers. The HOA president, Clifford Myers, bragged to newspapers about creating a wonderful modern neighborhood. But while Clifford was celebrating, Marjorie was quietly planning her response. Marjorie wasn't the kind of person who got angry and yelled. Instead, she was smart and careful. Every evening she sat at her dining table with Samuel, looking at her documents and writing letters. She knew that once the court saw her records, there would be no question. Those houses were built on her property. She wasn't angry in a loud way, but she was determined to get justice. For years before this happened, the officers could see Simone's FBI badge and realized she was telling the truth. They ordered Douglas to put his gun down, but he was still arguing that he was just doing his job protecting the neighborhood. Finally, Douglas realized he was in serious trouble. With police officers pointing their guns at him and all the neighbors watching, he slowly lowered his weapon. The police quickly grabbed the gun and put handcuffs on Douglas. As they put him in the police car, Douglas was still yelling that Simone didn't belong there and that he was just trying to keep everyone safe. But the neighbors had seen everything, and many of them were horrified by what Douglas had done. The police talked to Simone and took statements from neighbors who had witnessed everything. Many people had recorded the whole thing on their phones, so there was plenty of evidence of what really happened. After the police left, the neighbors were divided. Some people felt bad for Douglas and thought he was just trying to protect them. Others were angry that he had pointed a gun at an innocent woman in her own driveway. A few days later, the neighborhood HOA held an emergency meeting. The meeting room was packed with more than 60 people, way more than usual. Everyone wanted to talk about what had happened. Some neighbors defended Douglas, saying he was the only one who cared about keeping them safe. Others argued that what he did was completely wrong and dangerous. People were shouting and arguing with each other. Simone spoke to the group and explained how scary it was to have a gun pointed at her just for coming home from work. She told them that real safety comes from trust and responsibility. not from untrained people carrying guns and threatening neighbors. The HOA board voted to remove Douglas from the safety committee and banned neighbors from doing armed patrols. Only real police or licensed security guards would be allowed to carry weapons in the neighborhood. But the damage was already done. The neighborhood was split between people who supported Douglas and people who thought what he did was terrible. Some neighbors apologized to Simone, while others still gave her dirty looks. The story spread beyond the neighborhood. News reporters wrote about it, and the videos that neighbors took went viral on social media. People all over the country were talking about what happened. Judge Long ruled that Marjorie was the rightful owner of the land where Lakewood Meadows was built. The construction had been done without her permission or knowledge. The HOA and the construction company were responsible for damages. The families wouldn't be kicked out immediately, but their future depended on working out some kind of deal between the defendants and Marjorie. After the ruling, reporters surrounded the courthouse. Clifford Myers tried to escape the cameras, but couldn't avoid questions about the verdict. When Marjorie stepped outside, she calmly told reporters that this was never about hurting families. It was about protecting what belonged to her and her parents. The HOA had gambled with people's lives without permission. The neighborhood changed after the court decision. Some residents were angry at Clifford and demanded he resign. Others were upset with Marjorie, even though she had done nothing wrong. The families were stuck in a terrible situation. They had mortgages on houses that might not legally be theirs. Some families tried to sell their homes, but nobody wanted to buy property involved in a lawsuit. Others called their own lawyers to try to protect their investments. Many marriages and friendships were strained by the stress and uncertainty. Marjorie felt bad for the families but knew she had done the right thing. She attended a meeting at a local church where some homeowners had gathered. Instead of being defensive, she spoke honestly. She told them she didn't hate them and didn't want them to suffer, but the land had been stolen from her, and she couldn't just let it go. She explained that they weren't her enemies. The people who sold them false promises were the real problem. The construction company eventually offered Marjorie money to transfer the land rights back to the HOA, but she didn't rush to accept. She wanted the HOA to truly understand the weight of what they had done. Every shortcut they had taken and every assumption they had made came back to hurt innocent families. For Marjorie, winning wasn't about getting rich or getting revenge. It was about respect and showing that ordinary people could stand up to big institutions that thought they were untouchable. She had preserved her parents' dream and sent a message to anyone who thought being quiet meant giving up. Clifford Myers resigned in disgrace after angry residents shouted him down at his final HOA meeting. His ambition, which people had once admired, had turned him into a